Title of this podcast is What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure. So I want to be really clear. Today we have two stories. One is about drooling and one is about allergies, and chiropractic didn't cure them. But I'm excited for you to hear just how chiropractic helped to improve those children's nervous systems so their innate intelligence could help them out. Hi, I'm Jenna Quentin, founder of Adjust Your Media, host of What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of Innate podcast, and there are resources in the show notes that I want to be sure that you see and find, especially if you're looking for a chiropractor in the Chicagoland area, where our guest is from, or from anywhere around the world. There's a resource to help you find a pediatric chiropractor near you. Today on What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of Innate, we have Dr. John Reuter. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we met a few years ago back at Focus, Oklahoma City, and I was excited to kind of reconnect and hear a little bit about you because you have a lot of things happening, as well as your own podcast and things that you've done. So tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got in chiropractic.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you for having me. This is wonderful. And I'm so glad that you're doing this podcast because so many more people need to know how great chiropractic is. So my name is Dr. John Reuter, like you said, and I am a Chicago-based chiropractor. I'm actually in the city in a neighborhood called Roscoe Village, and I ended up going to Life University for chiropractic school. I was there. I graduated amidst the pandemic in 2020, and it was pretty dark days as far as just everything goes. And I ended up associating with an amazing chiropractor in Aurora, Illinois. And then after my associateship was up in about 17 months, I ended up buying my own practice here in the city and took over for a chiropractor here and had a great experience transition. And now we are in a brand new facility that we just opened up last September. And we doubled our square footage and are just rocking and rolling, seeing all sorts of moms, babies, families, older people, you name it, right? A little bit of everything. So it's been fun. Yeah, chiropractic has changed my life, and I had really terrible allergies as a kid, and I can get into that story in a little bit, but it really flipped my world upside down in a good way, and now I get to do what a chiropractor did for me for everyone else, which is fun.
That's awesome. I love knowing where different chiropractors are across the nation, mostly for my own vacation plans because I do want to come to Chicago, so we'll have to figure out when. But on this podcast, we're telling stories because I think it's such a great way, like you mentioned your own story with allergies, it's such a great way for us to communicate as humans. It's how we remember information better, and it really evokes the emotions a lot more than just if we listed off facts. We could list off studies and facts, but tell us a story. How has chiropractic improved the life of somebody in your sphere?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, every day is another, 50 stories. It's unbelievable. I think one of the coolest things that we've been seeing more and more in our office is kiddos and kids and pregnant moms and just their response to chiropractic care. And when we talk about pediatric chiropractic, we're not talking about rack'em crack'em robots, right? We're talking about very specific, very neurologically based chiropractic adjustments. And the metaphor that we use is you're testing the ripeness of a tomato, essentially, is the pressure that you're putting on a kid when you're adjusting them. And what's cool about kids is that they're extremely neuroplastic, meaning that, the old saying, like you can teach an old dog new tricks, right? You can teach a new dog new tricks, right? And I really love to see kids and adjust children because they get results really fast. But we're also seeing a much sicker population of children and another generation of sick children coming through our office. And it's different stuff, right? It's different than it ever was. And people are more subluxated than ever before. And when we talk subluxation, again, it's not hard bone on soft tissue. This is a neurological compromise in a child, and that is the hardest thing to overcome as far as chiropractic goes and that child's journey goes. So I would say I'll share a story about a little boy. His name was Bennett, and Bennett came into my office, and Bennett was 2 years old at the time. And Bennett came in with salivation up the wazoo. He was drooling constantly, ear infections chronically. And mom was like, I have no other choice. He was also nonverbal. He was 2 years old. He wasn't talking yet. And mom was concerned because they had an older brother and there were some dynamic things there. And she was like, he's not hitting the milestones as he should have. And so what mom wanted to do was start him under chiropractic care based on the education that we put out from our office and the workshops that we do. And so we started adjusting little Bennett, and little Bennett became like the coolest testimonial story ever. Started talking more almost immediately, like probably after about maybe 3 to 6 visits, and started talking, and not talking full sentences, but mumbling words every now and again. And then they were working with an OT and speech therapist, try to string some things together as well, which was amazing. And then, crazily enough, right, as chiropractic works, ear infections went away. Never had one again as far as he's been under chiropractic care. Didn't need tubes in the ears. And also the drooling, the salivating slowed down, because salivation, we can get nerdy with it, but is a parasympathetic response. And if the parasympathetics, the brake pedal of the system, is actually ramped up too high, it's going to cause dysfunction in those parasympathetic nerves and actions. And so drooling, salivating really starts to create a nasty thing. And so after you started getting adjusted, all of that stuff got better, went away, and it's absolutely amazing, right? And mom was blown away by it. Mom, was like, thank you so much. We don't have to get tubes anymore, blah, blah. And it was just like his body had it in him the whole time, right? Chiropractic released and unraveled the system that works for us in the background all the time, that us as adults who can process logic and reason through things, we can understand. But applying that to our kiddos, I think, is a much bigger conversation that needs to be had more.
I love all of this. That is so great. Thanks for sharing that one, specifically because you're talking about some symptoms and signs of dysfunction that people don't really associate with chiropractic. Way too often, people are like, well, it's for back pain. Or if you're in a car accident and you got whiplash, of course, Sure, you might go see a chiropractor. So these things like drooling and ear infections that you mentioned, I think that people still don't quite understand what that has to do with their spine. So if somebody's hearing this for the first time, what would you tell them?
Yeah, your spine is only the protector of the system that runs the whole body. And that protector is the spine, but the system is the central nervous system. And the central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord. And all of that gives rise to the functions that we are able to do every single day without thinking about it. And we can get nerdy, but it's going to break into a couple different systems. But we call it the gas pedal and the brake pedal in our office, right? We live in a high stress society and country and environment all the time, right? It's work, school, study, emails, messages, like it just keeps going and it never stops, it never rests, and you have to wake up the next day because that was just Monday, And it's like that to us is extremely stressful, right? And you and I are two adults who have logic, reason, and we can process and integrate information coming in. Our kids who are stuck, who are locked up, who don't understand these things, who have true neurodivergence, are receiving the same information we are, but they can't process and reason their way out of it. And they also can't communicate appropriately for a variety of different reasons. But then it turns into tantrums, it turns into ear infections, it turns into drooling, it turns into screaming, it turns into biting, all sorts of stuff, right? Or not sleeping, or colicky, or not breastfeeding, all of these things, right? And so our job is really to unleash, we call it unraveling, the nervous system. And when we unravel the nervous system, amazing things can happen. So the spine is the indirect and direct pathway to tap into that nervous system. And more people, if you're listening to this for the first time and hearing this stuff for the first time, more and more people are coming around to this, right? Because science is finally catching up to chiropractic. And chiropractic is now at the forefront of nervous system communication and health and wellness, and yogis, acupuncturists, like all of these things. I mean, acupuncture might go back into like Chinese medicine, which is thousands of years old, But when it comes to nervous system conversations, like when people in yoga tell you to ground yourself, listen to your nervous system, right? And really work on like the breath work and stuff like that. Chiropractic has been doing that 130 years, right? It's just a matter of we use the spine as a direct line to that nervous system. And we use it as a lever through adjustments, gentle, specific, accurate adjustments to make someone's system work better for them, because everyone has a nervous system. That's how we live. That's how we operate every day. But you have to unravel a stuck nervous system, and that's what we're seeing more and more in our kiddos.
Yes, well, I love this conversation of the nervous system is showing up more and more. I see so many people in the business space. A lot of women entrepreneurs in business coaching are starting to talk about that, about, if we are stuck in fight or flight or freeze, we just can't function, even though the logical part of our brain says, I should be able to answer this email without a meltdown. So I love that you're talking about this for children too, because I want to go back to, you said, we're seeing kids are sicker. And I was born in 86. So I grew up in the 90s where it very much was a different world of mostly you saw a lot of healthy, happy kids in the 90s. It's not a perfect world. But what are you seeing in these kids that shows that they're not thriving, that they are sicker?
Yeah, deeper, more aggressive subluxation. And what a subluxation is, it's neurological compromise. And when we think about neurological compromise, we can put labels on it: ADHD, ADD, OCD, anxiety, depression, autism, you name it, right? These are neurological compromises to the system. Why they're happening? There's a couple different thoughts out there, right? But to keep it basic is moms are not to blame, but moms are required to work more, harder, and longer, right? And so maternal stress has become extremely conversational around the holistic pregnant community, if you will. And maternal stress is extremely common to see in almost every mother, right? Because we are working to the bone. We are working until essentially they have a child. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, all those emails, all those messages, all that stress from a day-to-day basis without being pregnant, now you're pregnant, right? Again, this is not on moms. This is on the society that we've created, unfortunately, for ourselves. And so we're seeing a lot more maternal stress happening. And then the other thing is just how traumatic birth actually is and the physical damage that is done on a nervous system and on a spine and on a brainstem at the time of birth. You talk forceps, vacuuming, C-sections. C-sections are raising, they're about 32x since the 1970s. And so the idea there is just to say, hey, there's a lot more going on from a traumatic perspective and from a stress perspective. And those are just two of the components. And so a lot of kiddos are coming in more stuck, more subluxated. And what we mean by that is they are more aggressively neurologically compromised. There are more kids nonverbal. There are more kids with autism. There are more kids with poor eating habits or chronic ear infections or colicky or drooling. Just 2 days ago, I saw a little girl who was in here because she was also salivating so much. And she's 5 months old and she's going through 10 bibs a day. Right? That is not normal, right? And of course, mom recognizes that and says, I got to do something about this, but she doesn't want the pills, potions, lotions, and drugs option. And chiropractic puts ourselves in a really good place. Not that we're curing things. I think that's important to have a conversation about. We're not curing ADHD, autism, allergies, things like that, right? If people claim that, right, not as a practitioner, but maybe as a parent, if they go through it and they're like, whoa, my son, got 100% better, and they claim that, by all means, you got to tell yourself what you got to tell yourself. But that kid, we're unlocking that child's innate potential, internal potential that was already there, and we're just trying to tap into that. And we stick to neurologically based chiropractic. I never tell a parent, I'm going to help your son with ADHD or cure his autism or whatever it is. It's, hey, no, I'm going to focus on chiropractic. I'm going to focus on subluxations and I'm going to focus on unraveling this nervous system. What happens from there is up to his body, right? It's up to his innate potential. And it's really, really freaking cool what happens.
Agreed. And, I have seen this in my kids. I've seen this in myself. I appreciate that you talk about mothers being under stress and how society has made that so much of a badge of honor. Like, you can do it all. You can keep doing it all. You can bounce back. And being told, like, what? The only thing that should be bouncing is, maybe a basketball. But in talking about all of this stress, I want to go back to, we're both in the Midwest, and I don't know how it's been in Chicago lately, but it was 70 degrees on Monday here, and I think it's supposed to snow tomorrow. So even adding in those environmental stressors of our bodies are having to adapt, and if our nervous system is like, I cannot switch from that gas pedal to that brake pedal very easily here, then we're just struggling. You had also mentioned, talking about environmental stressors and things like that. You'd mentioned allergies. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit, because that's so wild to many people's minds. How could the nervous system possibly impact something like allergies? Don't you you have them or you don't, a lot of people think.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of people's attitudes about a lot of things, right? It's like, my mom had scoliosis, so I have scoliosis. My mom had RA, so I have RA. Those things are not necessarily genetic, right? Sometimes they are. Most of the time they are not. And now even with epigenetics, we're learning all sorts of crazy things that we can turn on and off. But that's a whole conversation for another time. But I want to go back to real quick the adaptation component that you were mentioning, right? Like the 70 degrees to 30 degrees, environmental stressors, right? In chiropractic, there's been a lot of research done by like the Christopher Kents in the world and things like that, who have done research on what's called GAP, G-A-P, which is general adaptive potential. And general adaptive potential is actually what chiropractic is making better, right? So this is why the LeBron Jameses of the world get adjusted. LeBron James doesn't get adjusted because he's hurt, right? If he is hurt, he's getting adjusted, but he's getting adjusted to be proactive about his reaction time, about his recovery time, about his speed and endurance. He's being proactive about his adaptability, going on and off the court. And so his job, his body's job, is to be as adaptive as possible at any given moment. And if there's a block on defense and he's got to sprint to the other side to get on offense, that's an immediate general adaptive potential. That is a change in adaptation. That is a change in environment, going from one end of the court to the other for a purpose that is different than what he was just doing. And so why I tell you that story is because we're all amazing athletes every single day, and we're trying to improve the quality of our lives. And with general adaptive potential, we improve quality of life. And that's what chiropractic taps into, which is really, really cool. And this is also why it's really hard to measure chiropractic, right? Because everyone wants a double-blind controlled study. And it's like, if you're getting adjusted or not. That's the hardest part. So you can't have someone be like, close your eyes, I'm going to adjust you or I'm not. It's like, okay, you didn't do anything, so you didn't get adjusted, right? It's like, it's really hard to do the kind of studies that they do in medicine because there's no placebo. There's no such thing as a placebo in chiropractic. You either do the thing, get the thing, or you don't, which is challenging, right? You can do like sham adjustments, but again, we can get into that. The conversation about allergies. Allergies changed my life. That's why I became a chiropractor. So real quick to share my story, I was 12, 13 years old. I had horrible allergies. I was getting 6 shots 3 times a week for allergies. If you're doing the math on that, I was getting 18 shots a week for allergies. I also had ADD, ADHD, and I was on Ritalin and Adderall and the things, right? And my parents really, honestly, were like, there's got to be a better way, right? And my dad ended up going to see a chiropractor in town. He was a parks director and went to a chiropractor and kept telling him about his son, right? Me. And that chiropractor was a good chiropractor. He said, Jim, bring your son in, right? Like, bring him in. He needs to get checked and let's see what happens. And I kid you not, 3 months later, I was a different human being, and I still, to this day, I attest that chiropractic got rid of my allergies altogether. I do not have allergies. I also, yes, potentially still have ADD, ADHD, but I learned to hone it, and I also learned what supplements to take to help level and regulate my system better for me. And I call it my inner genius, right? You just got to learn how to tap into your inner genius. And at that moment, at 13 years old, I looked at the chiropractor, Dr. Kurt Buss, and I said, I want to do what you did for me, for other people someday. And that's why I'm sitting on this podcast right now. That's why I see children and families in my office. That's why I am a chiropractor. And so allergies are highly connected to the nervous system. we go back to the brain stem, and we go back to something called cranial nerves. And cranial nerves are like your facial nerve, your trigeminal nerve, your vagus nerve, right? All these kind of big kind of players in the automatic world of your body, right? You don't really think you're going to have to think about breathing every day. You're not going to think about your blood flow. You're not going to think about your blood pressure. You're not going to think about, oh, I just ate a taco, now I have to digest it, right? Like that's all happening in the background, and that's happening honestly mostly through cranial nerves. And cranial nerve 10, which is your vagus nerve, does a lot of the organ system functions. But when it comes to allergies are going to actually be above the brainstem function. So this is going to be more like your trigeminal nerve, your facial nerve, and a lot of the nerves that go to your eyes, your ears, and your throat and your nose. And those nerves come from within the brain, and they give you control for your 5 senses. And our job is when we adjust the spine, again, we're directly and indirectly influencing the central nervous system. And a part of that central nervous system is those cranial nerves. And so by alleviating and unraveling that system, by turn, most of the time, you're going to have pretty positive results. Is it different for everyone? Yes. Is it better probably for kids because they're more neuroplastic? Yes. But at 12, 13, I still got amazing results, right? And it changed my life. So that being said, I think there's a lot of science back there behind it, but it's a lot of case studies. It's a lot of connecting the dots. It's a lot of sharing these stories with people so they know what the heck's going on. But yeah, that's how we do it. We influence the nervous system through adjustments, and it's going to influence every part and every aspect of that central and peripheral nervous system for sure.
Absolutely. And, I love that you brought up the vagus nerve too, because we see a lot of kids who have seasonal allergies who also have then food sensitivities and food allergies, and understanding that the digestion being managed and coordinated through the nervous system is not something that people completely put together. You talked about the gas pedal and the brake pedal, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, how we nickname parasympathetic rest and digest, and that thought of like, well, you're not going to digest very well if you're in fight mode, and understanding that that is the connection there. And again, like you said, we're not saying get adjusted and it will cure your food sensitivities. We're saying, okay, let's peel back all of the layers. I love that you said unraveling in the nervous system. Let's see how we can support the nervous system and see what of those things the body is then able to be like, whew, we can digest this a lot more easily because we're calm. We're not trying to run from our lives because we got a lot of homework.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like the simplest analogy I can use is if you just ate lunch and you had cheeseburger for lunch, whatever, right? And there's a tiger that comes into your house, your body immediately, just based on physiology, immediately does not care about the cheeseburger in your body. It says, we need to get out of this house or this room, wherever this tiger is, and run, right? Now, when you get to a safe zone, yeah, it's going to catch up with itself, right? It's going to digest and it's going to allow it to process. But literally, it's like a switch, right? And that switch oftentimes is heavily tilted towards the sympathetic dominance, which is the fight or flight. And we're all kind of living in this world. And this is what we talk about when we talk about stress. We're all living in this world, in this society that we've unfortunately created for ourselves, that there is a constant tiger literally lurking in every shadow, every corner of every room that we walk into. And you can't possibly live a high quality of life like that. So yeah, that's my analogy that I like to use for people, and it just usually resonates because it's like, yeah, I'm not going to like sit next to a tiger and eat my lunch, or my body's not going to be able to process it.
Well, and there's a little bit of the toad or the frog that we put in cold water and it slowly warms up until it doesn't realize it's being boiled alive. I think that we are in that where we don't realize quite how much stress is building up, how much stress our children are in because it's building up and becoming this. In thinking about stress, my 10-year-old has a fish aquarium, and you would not believe how sensitive fish are to stress. They can't handle it. If their ammonia levels if their nitrates, if their temperature. We had a bunch of snowy weather and our furnace stopped working and we're doing all of the things. But my thought was immediately like, we have to keep the fish tank warm enough. They can't handle the stress of the temperature going down in their tank. It's a whole thing. The heater in the water couldn't keep up because the house was too cold, basically. And so in thinking about that, we care so much about how stressed the fish are, but yet to realize the food we take in, the air we breathe, the events of our lives, like you mentioned, from birth trauma to toddlers that trip and fall and, take a tumble down 2 stairs so they're fine. But it all adds up to be a real problem, to be a high stress situation that we are in every single day.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Alrighty. Well, I know that we could keep talking about this for a long time. What is one thing that you just tell families all the time that you wish every family around the world knew about their health?
Your health is always in your control. And I think especially a lot of parents, there's a lot of fear out there for whatever it is, right? Medications for their kids, surgeries for their kids, whatever it is, right? Even for yourselves. But your health is in your control. And what you choose to do about it, I always will encourage a least invasive option to a most invasive option. And chiropractic care is the least invasive option you can possibly do for your own health and your family's health. It is the foundation of health. Obviously, I'm biased because I'm a chiropractor, but it is the foundation of health to have your nervous system regulated on a regular basis. And the moment you stop is the moment that life continues to go, because nothing else is stopping. Just because you stopped chiropractic care doesn't mean your life slows down just so you can coast into the sunset and live a great, well-adjusted life. That's not what happens. So immediately when you stop, guess what continues? Life, everything. And so you are in charge of your health. You are in charge of your family's health. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But at the same token, I highly encourage chiropractic care for everyone in your family and yourself because it changed my life, and I know that it could change yours too.
Agreed. And I know that as parents, I think I definitely have an urge to remove the challenges from my child's life, whatever they can be. I want to remove all of the stressors. But versus that kind of fear-based approach of I'm going to remove these things, it goes back to what you said about general adaptive potential and increasing that. And I tell them sometimes, this is a number 2 sized problem. You're a size 10 person. Next year, you're going to be a size 15 person. The problem can be there. We're just going to keep upping that general adaptive potential.
100%. I love it. That's a good analogy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. I'm going to put in the show notes some different resources for people to find a chiropractor near them, a pediatric chiropractor, and I will put where they can connect with you, especially if they're in the Chicagoland area.
Amazing. Yes, would love that. And thank you for having me on the show today. And I hope to be on again someday. Thanks so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.